Welcome to IG World Network, where we go around the world giving you the latest in the world of news. We are covering stories that are different within the African continent. Like we said last week, that we will be covering a big story that is coming out in relation to BRICS that is taking place here in South Africa. This morning we did definitely for sure attend the BRICS opening, and I don't want to say much about what was happening there regarding the accreditations and where you should be and where you should not be able to attend. Otherwise, I've got a guest that we just need a very good introduction of him, because we came across his story last week that he has done an investigation. His name is Justin Lewis. He is a forensic investigator. He's been investigating number of stories, but mainly it's the banks that he's been investigating. Is the same forensic investigator that broke the story for us, where the IPC in South Africa, which is the body that manages the government pension funds, was found wanting, that the government employees, they were about to lose their pension fund. And he raised that story, that investigation, and shared with the Member of Parliament, which is General Holomisa from UDM. He did table it in Parliament, but he never got an audience for it to be debated or to be discussed in Parliament. It just shows the state that we are in South Africa when it comes to serious investigation. We also coming in the background that the current sitting president has been found that he had done no wrongdoing by keeping foreign currency in his property. And listen to this. He goes on to say, because it was a business that was about to be done, or there was no obligation that was concluded about that business, it's okay that you can keep over $4 million in your house without reporting it to the relevant entities or putting it in the bank. Now, here's the question. People that have been found guilty for transgressions regarding keeping monies in their homes, what is going to happen to them now? Are they going to be acquitted? Because it's not an offense as far as the Reserve Bank is concerned. So it's very interesting that what came out yesterday from South Africa, but it was not a surprise. So we're waiting now for the Hawks to also deliver the same reports that they did not find any wrongdoing in terms of what the president has been doing. We're also waiting for South African Receiver of Revenue to also come with the same findings that no, he did not declare, but it's okay that he did not declare. But here's the question. Why other people and business people and individuals are being penalized for the very same act? Somebody needs to ask and answer that question for our viewers, so that everybody could know at least that it is a crime or it's not a crime to be able to keep so much money in your property. But as it may, we know now that the story that we are breaking this afternoon, Justin Lewis, he wrote to us, he told us that the chairperson of BRICS, his Honorable Cyril Ramaphosa, he is not a legitimate president of South Africa. It goes back to his inaugural election. So he's going to have to break it down for us and explain to us so that we get an understanding, what does he mean when he says he is not a legitimate president. Thank you very much, Justin, for joining us this afternoon. We are obviously in the very difficult time, not only in South Africa or in the African continent, but in the world in terms of what is going on. We know that there's a lot of digging that has been done around the globe, that there are a lot of situations and events that happened in the past that are coming out into the open now. Maybe let's just Justin, who is Justin Lewis?
Well, I'm a founder of a human rights organization lobby group called CASISA, and I lead a private UK investigation into corruption of His Majesty's government's institutions, particularly courts, given my experience from South Africa. And the current investigation involves a South African bank operating out of a tax haven, UK tax haven, under UK banking charters, that has been marketing and selling and creating a business model whose purpose is to legalize international money laundering, and has been used for the evasion of Russian oligarch sanctions. And after a meeting with the FCA in 2018 and again in 2020, they requested an independent legal opinion of our evidence. But pursuant to that investigation, I spent some time in South Africa in 2016. And secondary to that was another matter that came forward. 2016 was the period when the South African banks were under pressure regarding closing of the Gupta bank accounts. I don't know if you remember that. But at that time, I was given a file of evidence by a Hawks general, because the bank we were looking at, the same bank we were looking at in the UK, the bank we were looking at had money laundered through it in order to pay for bribes for the election of President Ramaphosa in 2017. The file was given to me for my opinion and actioning. But our focus, I was working then with Chief Justice Mogoeng, because our focus was on the corruption of the courts and its effect as an institution. The form of state capture by the bank's lawyers that makes access to justice difficult for people, to allow them to do what they want to do. But anyhow, so this file was given to me by the Hawks General after an instruction of then President Zuma's son. What was his name?
Anyway.
No, Edward Zuma.
Edward, yes.
Yeah. I was then taken to a meeting in Cape Town with top security police and officers. There was an elite Hawks team that had been put together from around the country to investigate the bank's conduct, and also the rigging or the bribing by Glencore and Johan Rupert to ensure the election of Ramaphosa in 2017. And the information that they gave me, they asked me to go through it 2 weeks later. We met again in Cape Town, but that time it was with the cabinet had put together, the South African cabinet had put together a team to investigate the corruption of banks. And I met with that team. There was I'm trying to recall the name of the minister.
Okay.
But at that meeting, after that meeting, my briefcase and my file was stolen from my vehicle, and that information about the evidence of the bribery was lost to me. But our investigation focused on the bank. So in 2017, when I returned to the UK, I submitted my report about the bank to the FCA in London, and then I was asked to attend a trial in the Royal Court of Jersey as what they call a Mackenzie friend of the court, to observe the conduct of this bank and its methods in legalizing international money laundering. And they do it through the corruption of the courts. What they do is they bring fake court applications, and then they get a court order based on the application, and they use the court order then to transfer money anywhere around in the world that they wish.
Okay, Justin, can I pause you there? On your introduction, you mentioned that in 2016, you spent some time in South Africa. Who invited you in South Africa to do the investigations that we are talking about now?
Lloyd's of London and I were victims of insurance fraud, using the same kind of model of fake court applications. And they had asked me, they lost 100 million, and I had lost 50 million. But that was earlier. That was right about 2008. So I was investigating how does one corrupt a court, and what are the mechanisms used. And the investigation began, in fact, with the time of Chaskelson, and I met with Pius Langer, and I worked with Mocheng to look at ways of curbing this form of corruption. That is why when I delivered my final report on behalf of Lloyds to the Financial Conduct Authority in London, they asked me to look at the same bank, but this time operating in a different methodology in Jersey, because the corruption of the courts in 2021 in England was declared an act of terrorism under the new anti-terrorism and sentencing bill, because the moment you submit a fake court application or you join the court in a criminal activity, which this is, what you're doing is you're changing the purpose of the court. And an act of terrorism is now defined as altering the purpose of an institution, qualifies. And that act is retroactive and applicable anywhere in the world. So that allowed me then to then continue with the investigation, because tax havens have a certain amount of protection. With the promulgation of that new law, we could then put the investigation into first gear into 2022. But what happened was that during 2022, I'd been aware that the U.S. Department of Justice, because I have one of our supporters is an attorney in New York. One of our supporters was giving me information that there was a prosecution about to go ahead with Glencore.
Okay, hold on there, Justin. There's a clarity that I just want to get after your 2016 investigation that you did here in South Africa. Which banks did you find that they developed this model that you're referring to, where they were creating these safe havens for individuals, not only here in South Africa and outside South Africa?
The one in the UK is Nedbank.
Nedbank.
But the Lloyds investigation actually began with Investec.
Investec.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's
Nedbank
a lot
and
of
Investec.
behind that. Yeah. But the focus of the UK investigation is Nedbank, because Nedbank operates out of a UK banking charter, which on completion of this investigation will probably be removed, along with many penalties. But that's the issue and the focus of our investigation. However, I mentioned earlier about being given the file of evidence of bribery and corruption by Glencore.
Okay.
And
before you get into Glencore, Justin, I just find here when we engage you, you reached out to us last week. You mentioned that the chairperson of BRICS summit that is taking place, which is the 15th segment of BRICS summit, which is taking place here in South Africa, which officially started today. The chairperson is not a legitimate president of South Africa. What made you say that?
Well, that's what I'm getting to. Now that the BRICS conference has started, the President Ramaphosa has effectively committed an act of fraud, because he was alerted.
Hold on. President Ramaphosa, he has created an act of fraud by participating in the BRICS summit.
No, by chairing a summit that he knows he may not legitimately be allowed to hold, he is committing fraud against his fellow excellencies, the head of China, Brazil, India, and Russia. Because the evidence that we have, and I'll explain to you why, the evidence that we have, and we alerted his attorney, Paul Harris, earlier in this year as to the risk of not addressing this issue of the existence of evidence of bribery and corruption by Glencore. Because once Glencore was convicted and paid $1.5 billion last year to the US Department of Justice and £250 million to the UK Serious Fraud Office, there was no longer a question of them of being alleged corruption and bribery. It was now a fact. And that is why I met with them in April of this year. We had a meeting because our concern, I said, there is this file that exists, and this file will confirm that President Ramaphosa may not well be the legitimate leader, because his election in 2017 was won by 179 votes. Now, if Glencore's bribery encompassed 179 votes, then Dr. Dlamini Zuma is in fact the president. And I said to the president's attorney, the moment that the conviction took place last year, I immediately contacted Peter Harris, it is Peter Harris, who was the president's attorney in the Pala money laundering issue. And I said to him, inform the president, because now we have a risk. If new evidence surfaces after this admission by Glencore, then that file that I had in my possession becomes extremely relevant. And I am registered as a US SEC whistleblower. I have no choice under the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act but to enforce or recover that evidence that was stolen. Otherwise, I am enjoining myself in a crime against the US Department of Justice and the UK Serious Fraud Office. So I spoke to Harris, and he contacted the President's office, and his response was he didn't have the mandate to get involved. The matter then escalated into a meeting with Glencore institutional investors. One of their lawyers contacted me in London because they were concerned if this file comes out into the public and confirms that Ramaphosa is not a legitimate president because of Glencore bribery and because of Rupert's involvement as well, then they would be able to claim large amounts of money. And it was these issues we discussed. I met with Glencore. They flew up to see me in Glasgow in April, and we went through, and from the beginning, the meeting was clear that the only reason why we were meeting was because of their admissions that had now created a chain event. And one of the chains in that event is, because of their admissions, is President Ramaphosa the legitimate president of South Africa? And because if he's not, then he's committing a fraud on his South African allies in purporting to be the chairperson when he's not legitimately entitled to, with the added effect that any agreement that's made in this BRICS conference will be null and void and useless, because if his chairmanship is illegitimate and his presidency is illegitimate, then the conference is illegitimate, and any findings that are signed by all the parties will fall apart. So those are the issues.
Okay.
And I said to the president, we need to address this.
With that said, Justin, I just want to assist our viewers. In terms of now, you started with the point that his presidentship, which, it happened in 2017. We know that in South Africa, we had general elections in 2019, where he was elected as the president of the country. But are you referring to his party election conference?
Yes.
So what makes you say that he was not legitimately elected in that conference?
Because if those 179 votes were paid for by Glencore, who's is now an admitted corporate corruption felon.
So are you saying, Justin, you have evidence that in the 2017 ANC conference that took place in Nasrec in Johannesburg, there were 179 delegates that were paid by Glencore, only Glencore?
No. The exact number we don't know. It wasn't only Glencore, it was from Rupert's crowd as well. And I'll tell you why that's important. The evidence that I had, I'd seen that evidence, but it was stolen from me in 2016. I said to them, you've got to be careful. We've got to take steps now, because if you are inactive or not proactive, new evidence might emerge confirming what I said. And that's exactly what happened. A month ago, an independent party came forward with evidence of the bribery and of the corruption through an Australian radio program. And that confirmed what I saw in the file in 2016, which immediately made the matter live. Now it is no matter a matter of allegation. An independent evidence was, and I'm sure more will come forward. But what that means is that the question mark as to the legitimacy of Ramaphosa's election is an act of fraud against the entire conference, and his refusal to join or meet with the U.S. Department of Justice and the UK Serious Fraud Office about these allegations is equally damning, because if he knew about it, then he would keep quiet, which is what's happening. But if he didn't know about it, the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, and I've alerted him to it, requires that he support my recommendation, which is an independent legal opinion, to look at this evidence and make a firm decision not from me, not from any other independent body, from a senior counsel, to determine if these concerns are legitimate. Not only that, in South Africa, we've been following the legal developments regarding expropriation without compensation law that they're intending to. Now, in the US, especially with the Trump elections, everybody's watched those, but there is a huge concern worldwide of foreign interference in local government elections. In this case, the foreign interference is Glencore, because they're a Swiss company. Interference in rigging through bribing, which is what the file evidence suggests, is a danger or threat to the state. A threat to the state under the expropriation and compensation law entitles the state to expropriate those people's assets without compensation, and that would include all of Remgro's South African assets. That would include all of Glencore's South African assets, and it is that brief. The moment that file, the new file came forward, the evidence was given to me independently confirming these allegations of the bribery. I contacted the victim, as I'm required to under the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, which is Dr. Dlamini Zuma, and I, as a minister in the presidency, I asked her to bring this to attention before the BRICS conference began, because the moment the BRICS conference began, without this issue being attended to, it put the president and the country into a position of fraud.
Okay, Justin, can we just get it this so that you get to the sequence of events correctly? Now, Glencore is charged, or after the investigation, they admit that they've committed crimes by bribe and corruption. Now we know, Justin, through the number of investigations that were done, that it also included that there were penalties that they admitted and then they paid, which was in terms of the countries like Cameroon, Burkina Faso, Equatorial Guinea, Nigeria, South Sudan, and Cote d'Ivoire, which is Ivory Coast. And out of all of that, the question that is lingering with South Africans and the viewers in the African continent, why is this company still in business in this, not only in Africa, but in the world?
Well, Glencore is as you know, I think its dividend last year was $65 billion. No, it's one of the largest mining companies and a huge supply of work. So it's not a. What they said to me at the meeting in April was that's the old Glencore. Now they've got the new Glencore, and those issues they were addressing them. As you say, all these fines to all those people have been paid over and above the $1.5 billion to the U.S. Department of Justice. But you must remember that the U.S. Department of Justice and the UK Serious Fraud Office investigations are not over. They are still ongoing. And when they made those admissions and they paid the fine, they agreed or undertook to follow a mentoring, or they've been monitored by a legal team in New York and a legal team in London to make sure that they continue their compliance with the undertakings. Now, this is a compliance issue because in all the admittances they made, not one word was made about South Africa. So I said to the UK Fraud Office, I'm aware of this file. I'm aware of this concern. So their response to me, Lisa Osofsky is the head of the Serious Fraud Office UK, was get an independent legal opinion on this evidence, because it doesn't matter what I say or what the other independent party says, or get the information together. And I then said to the president, through Mr. Harris, through his contact in the presidency, and through Dr. Dlamini Zuma, that you've got to tend to this issue, because A, you're required to, by law, international law, the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, and secondly, if you don't, and it's proven to be correct, then you've committed fraud on His Excellency of China, of Russia, of India, of Brazil, and the whole BRICS conference is then contaminated with this risk of being declared irrelevant, with enormous financial, yes, but certainly diplomatic repercussions, because you can't chair a conference when you know or you're aware of the risk that you might not be the chairman. It's incomprehensible. And the only way to deal with this, as per my recommendation, because I'm the consultant in this exercise, my recommendation to all three of them, to Mr. Harris, the president's attorney, to the president, to Glencore, was to address the issue as you're required to by law, by supporting the independent, or the creation of the independent legal opinion. Then these allegations then fall away, and we all know the truth. But what you cannot do is ignore the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act and pretend it's business as normal, because, as you said earlier, this is not an isolated incident in regarding the concern of bribery and corruption. There are countries in Latin America and Nigeria and Cote d'Ivoire, as you said, that are examples and proven of corruption and bribery. And Glencore said to me in my meeting, we admit it. We're not arguing the fact. But the moment that they admit it, they are obliged by law to take steps to remedy whatever damage that they've caused. And that's the issue.
Okay.
That we with
Justin, we are in South Africa sitting with Glencore still operating, let me say, in the SADC. As you also know, that they did the same thing in DRC Congo. And they are operating as like there's nothing wrong that ever happened. It's business as usual to them. And now the question that we South Africans will have, and the African continent, in countries like Nigeria, Cote d'Ivoire, Cameroon, South Sudan, what can be done, or what must be done with Glencore, at the moment? That's number one. Number two, what must be done with the people that are implicated to the wrongdoing that Glencore is implementing here in the African continent in particular?
Well, I think you must take Glencore at its word when it says it regrets what happened, and it's the evidence of that regret is the fines that they've paid, and they've engaged with the Cote d'Ivoire, and they've engaged with all these parties, and they've paid their fines. You must give them credit where credit's due. However, you cannot pick certain issues and ignore others. It has to be holistic. In other words, the chairman of Glencore at the time this was a fellow called Mr. Glenister, and he was the president's partner before he became president. So it was glaringly obvious to anyone involved in the investigations that the fact that South Africa wasn't included in the admittances and the settlement was almost impossible. And I knew that because I'd seen the file, stolen file, that was not so. So when I met with the Serious Fraud Office in the UK, and when I sent through my contact in New York, I said, this concern is very alive and very real. Again, they said to me, come with an independent legal opinion. So that's what we're doing. Glencore have made that choice. They say we don't want to be involved. Well, you cannot say we're sorry and that not be part of the remedy. You can't drive over somebody in a car and then say, I'm very sorry, but I'm not going to take you to hospital. It's absurd. So, but the repercussions are enormous. There's an election next year, I understand, in South Africa. And one of the issues will be expropriation of land without compensation, no doubt. And now this matter places all of Remgro's assets, South African assets, all of Glencore South Africa at risk, because if they do nothing, then they're perfectly entitled to say, but this is a breach, it's a threat to the security of the state. I'm getting rained on right now, as you can see, but it's the only way I can get a signal.
Yeah.
And this is a Scottish summer.
Okay.
So that's why this issue is ongoing.
Okay.
And the person that has to attend is the president. If he
Okay.
doesn't, then the situation that they find themselves in now will only get worse.
Okay, Justin. Now, all is said and done. President Cyril Ramaphosa, the chairperson of BRICS, is not a legitimate chairperson, is not the legitimate president in South Africa. What then South Africans can do?
Well, you must remember, it's not a fact that he's not the president. It's an allegation.
Yeah.
But the existence of the allegation must be tested because of its critical importance, not only to the BRICS conference, but to the future of Remgro and Glencore in Africa, as you just said. For them to have a future, this issue must be attended to, and that allegation must be tested.
So then, Justin, where can it be tested?
Well, through this independent legal opinion. Let us give the evidence of the alleged bribing, and let the independent legal opinion, because we are addressing the issue anyway. You see, that's what I said to them. I said we have to get an independent legal opinion on this bank's conduct of selling an international business model to legalize international money laundering. But as part of that opinion, the history of the investigation will be included, and the history includes this what we talk about now, the stolen file.
Okay. Before we get to the point where we lose you, Justin, can we just say, as far as the international community, is there anything that they can be able to assist the South Africans in terms of this matter?
Sorry, say that again?
In terms of the international community, is there anything that they can assist South African citizens regarding the illegitimacy or the investigation thereof of the legitimacy of the President Cyril Ramaphosa?
Oh yes, I mean the whole purpose of this independent legal opinion is for the UK courts and for the US Department of Justice, and they will act as they did against Glencore. You must remember, non-disclosure. Now the President knows about these allegations, and he knows about Glencore's admissions. So him not coming forward or being proactive as to our recommendation, or to find out if these allegations are true or not, is an act. It's a felony against the U.S. Department of Justice, because if you link to a crime, you cannot say, "Oh well, I'm surprised how that billion got into my garage." If you know nothing about it, then you've got to participate in its rectification. You cannot sit there on your hands and say, "Oh well, it's a nice surprise." You're required by law to say, "This has been brought to my attention. Let's find out the truth behind it."
Now, here's the question, Justin. It's only the parliament, which is the elected parliament and parliamentarians, that can, be able to put that independent panel together, which it will be signed off by the president himself, to investigate him. How are we going to get around it? Because I'm saying this in the background that we've had experiences around that. For example, the public protector was investigating his Palapala matter. Immediately she was suspended of the office, being charged for gross violation of the law, number one. Number two, it being incompetent. Now, how does one gets around there to say we find this independent panel that can do such, opinion?
We already have one. We've had one since 2022. 2021, I was in South Africa. In 2021, I was asked by the head of the BBC for Africa to visit South Africa because they were concerned about the effect of corruption of courts on the rhino poaching prevention. And I was stuck there under COVID. And I did a lot of research. And I met with Chris de Visa, and I met with Judge, and I met with the chairman of the pension fund, the PIC, all connected to these concerns. But I couldn't speak to them about the issue that I knew that was coming about Glencore's conviction, because that's in place. We can do this in the legal opinion within a month, and if after that it's a parliament wants to get involved, etc., then that's not an issue up to me. My job and my mandate is very clear. I have to provide an independent legal opinion as soon as possible, and that can be done in a month.
Okay. Should then, for the legitimacy of that legal, opinion, independent opinion, should you then get the mandate? Who must issue you with the mandate to be able to do that? Is the South African government, or there must be, a petition from South Africa to say we demand this independent legal opinion to be done and be put in the surface?
If I'm not successful, obviously that's the road it will go, and each path down that road will make the issue more what's the word, critical, because we don't need anybody's permission to get the legal opinion. What we need is the participants to participate willingly, rather than being forced to. But yes, if our independent legal opinion of the evidence says clearly bribery and corruption, then obviously there will be the parliament involved, and obviously the US Department will get back involved, and obviously there will be repercussions from there. But the issue is too important. And the reason why I say it's too important is because of the BRICS conference. You can't, to be blunt, you can't bullshit the entire BRICS community by pretending to be something that you're not. You owe it to them to if there's a concern to act. We're ready.
Now, can we maybe list the stakeholders that you can say, if I can get these stakeholders involved to participate in this piece, we could get it going. We will list them and will assist them that we make them, listen. Some of them, they do listen to our show, watch our show, listen to our interviews because of such interest, because we only touch, forensic investigated stories only. We don't do any other stories, hearsays. But on this one, which will be interesting parties that we can, bring onto the table and say, they can assist you in terms of putting this matter before elections 2024, because now South Africans, they cannot go to another 5-year term where they are led by a person that is a criminal, that is a thug, that is not legitimate to lead the country.
Well, if you could, I believe you're recording this, if you could send a copy of this the recording to Glencore, and if you could send a copy to Mr. Johan Rupert, And if you could send a copy to the president and to Dr. Dlamini Zuma to make sure that when the hour comes, that none of them can say we didn't know. And when the Glencore shareholders and when the Remgro shareholders one day, God willing, it doesn't happen, find out that the assets in South Africa are going to be expropriated, they can't say, how did this come about? It came about today. You cannot ignore the issue. Besides the fact that the US Department of Justice is without a doubt the most powerful law enforcement body in the world. It's already given a conviction. It's not asking for conviction. What we're dealing with here is the end result of Glencore's admission.
Okay.
We would not be having this discussion if Glencore had not been in the US and in UK last year. It's because of that all of these implications have erupted, and we've got to deal with them. We can't, otherwise we're complicit.
Okay. Justin, we know now that these people, president's office, ministers, officials, big corporations, if we engage them, obviously sometimes they just opt for not responding, keeping silent. What time frame can we give to them to say, guys, here's the recording, listen to this recording, and then within this period, you must respond to these allegations, or we will go ahead and do the opinion, and then we'll publish it to South Africans and Africans at large to know the corruption, the amount of corruption and the rot that is in this country and how we have influenced the rest of the world.
Unless the president, and that's why I'm asking you to give a copy of the recording, make sure he gets a copy, and certainly Dlamini Zuma, especially if she's meant to be leading the conference. Unless there's a response from the president before the end of the BRICS conference, which is...
Okay. That's how urgent it is. He must respond before the end of the BRICS conference. We should get this recording to him as early as tonight. I'll ask my producers that we get just this section, get it to his office. He must respond, and he must know that he must respond before the end of BRICS summit, so that we can also be able to move forward. We will also send it to Glencore, and then also we will also be able to send it to Remgro Group, including Rupert himself, and we'll also make sure that Dr. Nkosazana Zuma, she receives this recording and she acts on it before the end of this BRICS conference.
Absolutely. All the president has to do is say, it's been brought to my attention, we are dealing with the matter. That's all. Then he complies with the international laws. There's no risk to him. But he has to do it now.
He must acknowledge. That's what is important.
Oh, we only found out now. Good heavens. You cannot do this level of deception for the whole of 40% of the BRICS is 40% of the entire world GDP. I mean, it's mind-boggling. You cannot allow a risk of this nature to live longer than the conference, because every day thereafter, any attempt to say, well, I didn't know, and perhaps this he's entirely innocent of this, and therefore his presidency, even if there was prosper without his knowledge or consent, that means he's still president. But he has to address the issue, because if it comes from the Zuma, then it's going to be a disaster for the president.
Okay, just assist us, Justin, in terms of them responding, reaching out to you in terms of these allegations. Where can they respond to, so that when we then put it forward, we will even put it up on the video that they will be sharing with them to say, guys, you can respond, to this address, even the contact numbers, so that they are aware. The good news that we have for our viewers is that you are not a stranger to them. You spent some time with them in 2016 doing investigation, so they would know you very well. So where they can reach you and how we can then put it forward to say we're giving them 48 hours to respond to you before, this thing goes, in the public regarding this discussion.
Well, I don't say 48 hours, but I don't know when the BRICS conference officially ends. But before the conference ends, certainly, the contact details, Dr. Dlamini Zuma's office have got it. Johan Rupert's office have got my contact details. Glencore certainly has, because we met in Glasgow. So they must, but theoretically, the president should lead the response from his office. The president's there's a gentleman in the president's office. What is his name? Mike. Anyway, Paul Harris, the president's attorney in the Pala matter, he's got his contact details. So perhaps Paul.
Okay, Paul Harris, we will reach out to him. We will reach out to Paul Harris to make him alert the president that there is this matter of which he is aware of. He needs to act on it. Otherwise, it's going to the public in the African continent and the rest of the world that the president is not a legitimate president. Remgro Group, Johan Rupert, we are going to reach out to him as well. Everybody that is involved, as is implicated in this matter, Glencore, the culprit that is implicated in this matter, by their own admission, not by us, is by their own admission that they've been going around the world bribing people down in Brazil, in North America, in West Africa, East Africa, SADC, going around bribing companies for them to do business. But this time around, they have to come forward and say it's either they come and play, parts in resolving this matter by just removing this illegitimate president that is running this country. And very difficult, because even the bank statements of this sitting president were sealed by a dodgy judge, deputy judge president of Gauteng, Judge Ledwaba, which we find that was very strange, that from the chambers he can just seal the bank statements and then says no one will be able to gain access. Now we know why these bank statements were sealed, because the monies that were coming in, the flow of the money was speaking to even the judges themselves, receiving money from this campaign that was called so-called CR17 nonsense campaign, where they were going to steal the votes in their own party conference, so that this illegitimate short man called Cyril Ramaphosa can be the president of the ANC, which was going to lead him to be the president of the country. Now we know, we have no respect for Cyril Ramaphosa. All the courts that keeps making sure that all the matters about Cyril that are brought into court, they always rule in his favor. South Africans, they've been saying to us, we are going for those judges individually on their personal capacity after this man he comes out of power. And we applaud the citizens that are saying that, because even a blind person can see, even an illiterate person can see, even a fool can see that the South African judiciary is working for Cyril. All the state and law enforcement agencies, they are working for Cyril. The Reserve Bank just yesterday on the 21st of August, they just released a dubious report saying they don't find Cyril basically that he had committed any wrongdoing by keeping money in his property for a period more than a month. The chairperson and the governor of the Reserve Bank, shame on you. You will be held accountable for this yourself. The Deputy Public Protector, shame on you. We are waiting now for the investigation by the Hawks. They will come out as well and say there was no wrongdoing. Shame on you. We are waiting also for the South African receiver of revenue. They will come out and say there was no wrongdoing. Shame on you as well. Before you even release your cooked report, you cannot do a report for a year and then you come tell citizens of South Africa the nonsense that Kaiser told the people yesterday. We know now that they are covering up, but the South African citizen, one day they will rise and they will rise against them, and it will be the end of them and their careers. Our hope and we pray that they've stolen enough money so that they will disappear and go live anywhere in the world where other thugs are living, that rips their countries off in terms of their resources. But as we close this show today, we are closing up by saying, Justin, please provide us with details. We will share this information with all of them, and we will give them time to say before this BRICS conference ends in 24 hours, you must have responded. Otherwise, Justin Lewis is going ahead and providing with this proof to the rest of the world. And South Africans, they will be very difficult for you to still agree to say this man must lead you to this, lead you in this country in 2024 elections. So as we sign off this afternoon, we say thank you very much to our viewers in the African continent. We are saying we'll bring you some more stories that are intriguing. Don't bother when we get emotional sometimes. We do get emotional sometimes because we cannot see our continent being destroyed by individuals. We cannot see our country being destroyed by individuals. This afternoon, we were zooming in to the legitimacy of the presidency of Cyril Ramaphosa. It is very evident that this guy, he is not a legitimate leader in this world. Until next time, Africa, we say adios for now.